Alright, so as you can see here, I got a lot of shit for my last video. You know, it was going against a popular channel, so it was to be expected. So I decided to reflect on what I was doing last video, and I decided that I liked it.
Hey everyone! So if you've been on the internet at all in the last couple of weeks, you've probably seen a lot of discussions about civility in politics. If you follow me on Twitter, I'm sure you know how I feel about this, but I wanted to round up all of my thoughts on civility into one video. But before you watch this, go watch my video on everything that's been happening with the children being separated from their parents at the border.
No. You do not actually have to watch a video on a completely different subject in order to understand that being civil to someone is what you should do. You know, I know that the whole separation of the families at the border is a bad thing. You know, admittedly, these people are crossing the border illegally, and that's bad as well, but we should try our hardest to keep the families together, at least. However, that does not matter in a conversation about being civil to people, alright? Yes, families are being torn apart. That is bad. That is a horrible thing to do. Do not misrepresent me. That is not good. However, just because some people happen to agree with this does not mean that you have the right to go around being an asshole.
I think it's possible to discuss multiple issues at once, but I do want to make sure you're aware and caught up on what the Trump administration has been doing at the border.
Yes. Most people who are politically active are aware that horrible stuff is happening. That does not change the fact that being a bad person to other people still makes you a bad person.
It's heartbreaking and needs your attention, and there are organizations fighting the Trump administration's policies that need your support. So anyway, how did civility become the recent thing that everyone is talking about?
It's because some people notice some other people being assholes to each other. And those same people that notice that are people that do not want you to be assholes to each other. So they were like, hey, stop that. You need to be more civil. You know, admittedly, this goes with both sides. Both sides of this argument need to be civil to each other, the left and the right. But neither of you are. None of you are civil to each other. Well, I shouldn't say none of you. Of course, the vast majority of people are civil, but it seems as if the really, really popular people are just jumping at each other's... They're just jumping at each other's throats. You shouldn't do that. You should know not to do that. So, we're trying to tell you not to do that.
Well, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Trump's press secretary, went to a restaurant called the Red Hen. The owner knew that Sanders' presence made a lot of her staffers uncomfortable.
It doesn't matter if your staff is uncomfortable. They're there to do their job. They're there to get paid. If they feel uncomfortable, they can go ahead and quit. You know, your job is to be around people. Admittedly, you know, some of these people are more intimidating than others, some of them make you feel more uncomfortable than others, but your job is to be around these people regardless. If you are uncomfortable, that does not matter.
So she asked them all what she should do, and they voted to ask Sanders to leave. So the owner of the Red Hen politely asked Sanders to leave, and she did. But soon after, she started complaining on Twitter from her official government account.
Oh no, she was complaining on Twitter for a minor inconvenience that she suffered? It's almost as if you do that every day. Admittedly, it being from her official government account is bad. I'm not gonna lie about that. That's not good. It should have been from a personal account. But at the same time, complaining is something that everyone does. Why is there an issue with it?
About how she was asked to leave the Red Hen. Obviously, the people who worship the Trump administration, regardless of what they do, were quick to jump to her defense.
See, when you are angry at someone not being allowed to eat at a restaurant because of their political beliefs, that does not mean that you automatically want to defend the Trump administration on everything that they do. That just means you're angry at someone who wasn't able to eat at a restaurant. You know, it's like the same thing with that one cake that baker dude a few years back, I think, didn't want to bake a cake for that gay wedding. It's the same thing, just on the other side. You know, the right-wingers didn't want to bake that gay cake. Now left-wingers don't want right-wingers to eat at their restaurants. It's all dumb, it's all stupid, and it all needs to stop.
They asked where all the civility had gone and why Sanders was being treated differently just for political views. They began harassing not only the Red Hen restaurant in Virginia where Sanders went, but several other completely unaffiliated Red Hen restaurants in places like DC, Connecticut, and New Jersey.
Well, yeah, if they are legitimately harassing these restaurants, then those people need to stop. It's that simple. However, I think that your definition of harassment goes wildly against most people's definition of it. So, until I see some proof of actual harassment, like someone going and egging the whole building, I'm gonna take that with a little tiny grain of salt.
The DC Red Hen was even egged.
Okay, well, you did say that one of them was egged. I actually did not know that. That was a coincidence. But, like I said, if that is true, then these people are douchebags. You know, there's no in between about that. If you egg a restaurant, then why? Why are you a person? Why do you exist? Stop doing that, please.
And many of them have received death threats. But where is the civility for Sanders?
See, that's the thing. Just because some other people are not civil does not give you the excuse to not be civil back. Okay, like if someone tries to hit you, or if someone like throws an egg at your building, you know what? You being uncivil is completely fine. However, to generalize an entire political side and not be civil to the entire side, that's where we have issues. You know, it's fine to do it in specific cases, like to specific people, but when you generalize right-wingers and left-wingers as enemies of yourself and be uncivil to them as a whole, that's where issues come in.
Since then, Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen and White House advisor Stephen Miller have both been booed and heckled out of Mexican restaurants. And again, Trump's loyal supporters ask, where is the civility?
Trump's loyal supporters. No, it's people who are right-wingers and some centrists and left-wingers that just don't like this whole thing that's going on. You know, admittedly, a lot of these people are loyal to Trump, and I think that people who do stuff like that, who like defend Trump at every circumstance, I don't believe they're right. I believe they're in the wrong most of the time. However, I will say that you are creating a straw man for most of these people. Most people are not actually like what you're saying they are like.
Then, California Representative Maxine Waters urged people to push back against members of the Trump cabinet and, quote, tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere. When she got death threats from the Trump supporters who apparently want civility, she got on stage at the Families Belong Together rally in LA and said, if you shoot me, you better shoot straight.
Okay, let's get one thing straight. These Trump supporters that are giving people death threats and threatening to kill people are not the same Trump supporters that are asking for civility. Alright? That's like saying, oh hey, this member of ISIS actually just wants religious equality. He doesn't want to be made fun of. No. They're out there to be assholes. You know, they don't want civility. It's that simple. These are two separate people that you're talking about.
There's nothing like a wounded animal. And like, can we all just take a second to appreciate Maxine Waters? She is a 79-year-old black woman. I cannot imagine the shit she's gone through.
Yeah, that's fair.
And yet she's out here fighting for what she believes in, still after all these years using her energy to fight for civil rights while conservatives threaten her. And many liberals are too afraid to support her. The President of the United States is trying to portray her as an angry black woman trope. Meanwhile, members of her own party, like Chuck Schumer, are distancing themselves from her.
Trump may very well be saying that she's an angry black woman. However, that's because he is a political opponent. I don't like that term, but that is more than likely what they would consider each other, just like you and Trump would consider each other political opponents, and just like how you're straw-manning Trump, Trump is straw-manning her.
So all of this has culminated in Republicans getting to act all high and mighty, pretending to be the most civil people on the planet, while Democrats are debating if it's okay to be a little rude to Trump's administration.
No, see, the thing is, there's a difference between being a little rude and just straight up kicking someone out of your restaurant. The fact that you don't understand that absolutely baffles me, if I'm being honest with you.
Let's talk about this in 3 parts. Number 1, the Republican Party doesn't get any sort of high ground when it comes to civility.
Everyone gets high ground when it comes to civility if these people are actually civil. The fact that you say Republican Party and just refer to the whole group is actually what is wrong with this whole situation. You know, there are people that are civil to each other in all sides of this debate. There are people that are uncivil to each other in all sides of this debate. The fact that you are grouping this entire political party together is what makes people not want to be civil to you, Riley.
For as long as I can remember, Republicans and conservatives have mocked political correctness and made it a point to go out of their way to offend and insult people.
We mock political correctness because people try to make us be politically correct. You know, people try to censor people who are not politically correct if they want you to be politically correct. So, for the people that don't want to be PC, the people that want them to be PC are being uncivil to them to get them to be that way. So, when stuff like that happens, of course you're going to have people that are like, fuck that. You know, admittedly, I will say going out of your way to say misgender or trans person, you know, if you do something like that, you're an asshole. It's that simple. Call a person what they want to be called, unless it's, like, actually retarded. You know, if a person wants to be called he, she, etc., that's fine. I'll call you whatever. You know, I think that Riley here transitioned from male to female, so for all intents and purposes, I'm going to call Riley a girl, you know, if that's what Riley wants to be called. I'm not going to go out of my way to disrespect her. However, when you have people who are trying to censor you for doing something like that, then you're going to have people who go against it. You know, there's nothing that's going to change that.
Conservative icon and piece of horseshit sculpted vaguely in the shape of a human, Jordan Peterson, made a whole career out of not being civil towards trans people by not using their correct pronouns.
If he actually did that to a trans person, and I was around, I'd be like, you're being a bit of a cunt, dude. Stop doing that. You know, I don't believe that being uncivil is a good thing. You should try to be as civil as you can possibly be, regardless of what side you're on. You know, I'm not going to defend someone just because they're Republican. I'm not going to defend someone just because they're Democrat. I'm just going to defend whoever is right in that situation. You know, if that dude misgenders trans people, he's an ass.
Trump openly mocked a disabled reporter early on in his campaign, showing a major lack of civility.
I'm going to harp on about this point all throughout this video because you basically say the same things from what I'm seeing already. Just because someone's uncivil does not necessarily mean you should be uncivil to them. There are exceptions to this, but at the same time, not everything is one of those.
And Republicans still backed him. He encouraged his supporters to beat up protesters at his rallies, going as far as to say he'd pay their legal fees, and Republicans still backed him.
Sure. That may or may not have happened, you know. I never heard anything about that, but knowing Donald Trump, I wouldn't doubt it, because Donald Trump is an asshole. Just because that may or may not have happened, just because it happened, does not mean that you should be rude to people who voted for Trump. You know, these people voted for Trump for their own reasons. Admittedly, a lot of Trump voters are racist. A lot of them are sexist. Not all of them, though.
He word for word said, if you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you?
Okay, yeah, though. I mean, if you are throwing a tomato at someone, and another person wants to defend that person, there's really nothing wrong with that. Like, you are getting ready to throw a tomato at someone, and someone else doesn't want you to throw a tomato at that person. You know, that's why.
Seriously, okay? Just knock the hell. I promise you. I will pay for the legal fees. I promise. And Republicans have the gall to pretend that they have civility?
The Republicans have the gall to say that they have civility? Yeah, because most people The vast, vast majority of people are civil to each other. Of course, you've got the loud minority that isn't civil. You know, that's why they're loud, because they're not being civil at all. But for the most part, people try to be nice to each other. You know, it's the golden rule. Treat people how you want to be treated. You know, most people take that and they actually use that rule. Not you, apparently, but whatever.
And it's especially ironic for me personally, since I've had so many conservatives in my mentions for the last couple years telling me to kill myself, insulting me, misgendering me, dead-naming me, and now all of a sudden they want civility?
Again, these people that are being rude to you are not the same people that want you to not be rude to them. Alright?
They want to be treated with a kindness they've never afforded anyone else because life is just so hard for them when they have control of the presidency, the Congress, and the Supreme Court.
No. Republicans do not have control of any of that. The people in power do. You know, the government is in power. You think that the general population holds any power at all? If you really think that, you're just kidding yourself. No, what people want does not matter at all, whatsoever. You know, you might get on to me for being a white male. You know, you say that, oh, I've got all the power in society. You oppress me because you don't want to date trans people. But I have no control over what the government says or what it does. No control over anything like that at all. So, for you to say that Republicans have control of the presidency, Congress, etc., that's false.
That's just hilarious. I can't do anything but laugh at that. For so long, conservatives have rallied against political correctness and the evils of having a base level of respect for people because it didn't affect them.
See, there's a difference between not being politically correct and not being civil. It's like the difference between calling you intellectually dishonest and calling you a fucking liar. Alright, yes, they are both the same thing, but one sounds monumentally more civil than the other. Alright, does that make sense?
And now that the tables have turned, they want everyone to be unwaveringly kind to them no matter what.
You don't have to be unwaveringly kind to someone, it's just that you shouldn't go out of your way to be a douchebag. Alright? Like, if someone is being rude to you, I'm all for you being able to tell them to fuck off. Alright? You can go ahead and do that all you want. That's fine. It's good. It's great. However, if someone is just, say, going inside of your restaurant so they can eat, so they can pay you to let them eat, and you tell them to fuck off automatically, that's where the problem begins.
Nah, sorry, it doesn't work like that. If your party is vitriolic at its core, you don't get to act high and mighty when it comes to civility just because the press secretary couldn't eat at a single restaurant. She's the freaking press secretary. I think she'll be okay.
To its core, you say. To its core? Every party is rotten to its core. That's what the government is.
If anything, her going on her official government Twitter account and complaining about the red hen, which put it in danger from aggressive Trump supporters, showed the real lack of civility. Conservatives are unable to see the simplest of power imbalances.
Are you telling me that in a position where the staff of a restaurant decided to kick out someone and that person tweeted about it, you're telling me in that position the people at the restaurant have the moral high ground above the person who got kicked out and was just tweeting about it? Are you sure about that? Because I need you to think long and hard about this one. Everyone goes on Twitter to complain about things. You know, there's no exception unless you just straight up do not own a Twitter, in which case you go on a hipster website like MySpace. Does that still exist anymore? Actually. Alright, so the simple answer is no. MySpace does not exist anymore. The more complicated answer is, yeah, it doesn't exist anymore.
The press secretary has a lot of power. The owner of a restaurant, less so. When the owner of a restaurant doesn't let the press secretary eat there, it's a nudge at the powers in charge.
It's a nudge at the powers in charge. When you nudge at someone, expect them to nudge back with as much power as they can, really. You know, obviously the press secretary isn't going to campaign to get the restaurant shut down or anything, but when you inconvenience a person, expect someone to call you out on it.
It's a tiny bit of fighting back against the established power structures.
It's a tiny bit of fighting back against the established power structures. Well, if you fight back against the established power structures, then you're fighting back against the power structures, so you should expect them to fight back against you.
When the press secretary swats back with the full force of her audience, she's hitting back 1,000 times harder because there's a clear power imbalance.
If you are scared about the power imbalance between you and someone else, then don't swing upwards. It's that simple. If you are afraid of the reaction that you're going to get to swing at someone, don't do it. It's like me going up to like a burly buff dude and just punching him in the face. How well do you think that's going to work out for me? It's not. I'm gonna die.
The government, the agency that's overwhelmingly in control and in power compared to the owner of a restaurant, is directing its followers at a restaurant that slightly inconvenienced it. The one with more power in this situation, the Trump administration, is hitting back way too hard.
No, it's not hitting back way too hard at all. It's hitting back just right, actually, because it's hitting back at all. Okay? Do not try to push something if you are not prepared for the consequences. You know, it doesn't matter who is right or wrong in this situation. That's just a simple fact of life. If you are going to push against something, be prepared for it to push back.
Which kind of brings me to my next point. Number 2, denying an individual service because you disapprove of how they're destroying families, killing migrants, and defending a fascist regime is different than denying an entire group of marginalized people service simply because of who they are. The power imbalances are way different.
Gay people in America, I know for a fact you're referencing the cake situation. You know what? Gay people in America are not oppressed. Not anymore. Alright? There are still people that'll go up to you like, you're a faggot, I hate you, you need to fucking die. But, guess what? If they try to kill you, they're going to jail. Alright, it is illegal to kill gay people. You know, gay marriage is a thing now. It's all great. You know what? It's more acceptable now to be gay than it ever was before. You know, the same goes for being transgender. You know what? The only people that are homophobes or transphobes are people that are just assholes. You would say something along the lines of, oh, well, it's still not mainstream to want to date a trans person. And I would respond, shut the hell up. But my point is that it is no longer mainstream to hate on homosexuals or trans people. Alright? They're not oppressed. You're doing just fine.
I've seen a lot of people comparing this to the incident where there were bakers who didn't want to bake a cake for a gay couple, but there's no comparison.
Yes, actually there is a comparison. It's, oh hey, I'm going to deny service to this person because I believe something that they do not believe, or they believe something I don't believe. You know, that is the comparison. That is all there needs to be said.
For starters, Republicans have long held the stance that any business should be allowed to deny any person service for moral reasons.
You should be allowed to deny a person service if it's for a legitimate reason. However, the people that are getting their panties up in a bunch over this are people who are noticing that you're being hypocritical in this situation. You know, with the gay cake situation, there was an outcry. My point is, there was a public outcry against this baker. People were like, oh, you need to bake the cake, you need to do it how they like, you gotta do it. And people are noticing that you're being very hypocritical in this situation, because now you're like, How's that denial of service going, buddy? The people that are mentioning the cake thing are just people that are noticing that some people are being hypocrites. Alright? If you were for the gay couple and the cake in that situation, and for the restaurant in this one, you are a hypocrite. It's that simple. If you were for the baker and for the restaurant in this, then congratulations, you believe in denying people service. In my mind, you should be able to deny a person service for whatever reason, as long as it's at least somewhat reasonable. And if the general public don't believe that your reason is reasonable, then they're gonna tell you that with their wallet, and you'll go bankrupt. You know, I can almost assure you that that cake dude, that baker, is not getting any service from liberals. You know, sure, some conservatives might have been like, feeling a bit hungry, I want some pastries, my man. Give me some of those. But other than that, I'm sure business has went down for him. I wouldn't be surprised. I kind of went on a tangent there, but my general point is a lot of people are being hypocrites, and people are pointing that out.
So following their logic, they should be 100% okay with Sanders being denied service.
I'm not okay with it. However, I do understand that restaurants should be able to tell people to get out for whatever reason. I think it's a dumb reason. I don't think it should have happened, but I'm not going to go out of my way to just boycott this restaurant for it. People can vote with their wallets. You know, I'm not one of the people that would do that. You know, if their food was good and I lived by one, I'd be going to it regardless of their politics. But I can see how something like that would ruin relations. You know, there was this one restaurant I saw on Twitter that was like, if you come in wearing a MAGA hat, you're gonna get it taken from you, and we're gonna put it on fire with a flamethrower. Yeah. You know, that type of stuff is just retarded to me. Don't do that.
But apparently, when they're the ones being denied service, they think the government should step in and force a business to serve someone they don't want to. Interesting. Really sounds like a small government there. But the important thing to note here is that the reasoning behind not serving a gay couple and not serving Sanders are completely different. Those bakers chose not to serve a gay couple simply because they were gay.
And this restaurant chose not to serve the press secretary simply because of her political beliefs. Yeah, I don't really see the difference there. It's because there is none.
They were discriminating against them based on who they are.
Well, you could say the same thing for the press secretary, like, oh, who is she? She's the press secretary. Get her out of here.
Their gayness isn't hurting anyone, they can't change that about themselves. And anti-queer beliefs are so deeply embedded in this country that if we allowed everyone to deny service to queer people could just entirely run out of places to be able to be served.
There, simply put, enough people are queer that if you were to start denying them service everywhere, a large amount of businesses would lose money. A business's bottom line is how much money they make. You know, if they start to lose money because they don't accept queer people into there, then they're going to start losing money. You know, enough people are queer that would happen.
Imagine if you live in a rural area and the only hospital around you for 100 miles doesn't accept queer people. What do you do when you're hurt? What if none of the grocery stores in your city serve queer people? Where do you get your food?
Most places are unable to identify if you are queer just by looking at you. So in that situation, you would just be like, yep, I'm totally straight, 100%, love dicks in my mouth, I'm Riley Dennis. You know, that... Don't take that out of context, please. Okay. In that situation, people just pretend they're straight. Alright? It would never happen, though. Because more and more people are starting to realize they're queer, and eventually it's going to reach a point where it will be unviable economically to be against queer people.
There's clearly protections that need to be put in place to protect marginalized people in this country. But Sanders was not denied service because she's part of a marginalized group that is just barely starting to gain any rights in this country.
The only rights that gay people did not have was the right to marry. And they have that now, so cool.
She was denied service because she, as an individual, is a terrible person who does terrible things on a daily basis.
The same thing could be said about gay people through the eyes of like a super ultra duper conservative Christian. You know, if you go by like how the Bible is, they tell you to just murder gay people. So in a Christian's eyes, you could say the exact same thing about gay people. The point here is that just because you think someone is an asshole, just because you think they're a terrible person, does not automatically mean you should kick them out of your restaurant. It just means that you should try to get them out of there as soon as possible. Be like, hey, can I take your order? Yeah, you want that? Cool. Get it to them, let them eat, then they'll leave, you know? Problem solved.
You're allowed to deny people service based on them just doing shitty things. Being an asshole is not a protected class that needs to have its civil rights protected.
There honestly should be no such thing as a protected class. You know, the whole idea of that is just retarded. Like, yes, people are going to hate on other people for their characteristics. However, by the very nature of stuff like free speech and etc., that should be allowed. Not saying that hating on people is a good thing. You know, it's obviously a bad thing. If you go out and just be like, hey, I really fucking hate crippled people, then you're just a bad person. But that does not necessarily mean that crippled people should be a protected class. And the same goes with race, the same goes for like religion, etc. It's all dumb.
She has a very powerful job serving the President of the United States, and she will have no problem finding another restaurant to eat at. Besides, she could stop being press secretary at any time. She could stop serving a fascist regime and stop defending Trump's lies, and then she could probably go back to eating wherever she wants.
Yes, but I'm sure her government job gives her a nice little bit of pocket change, and I'm almost entirely sure she doesn't want to go from being press secretary to working at a Burger King.
So yeah, businesses do have a right to deny people service if they're doing shitty things, but they do not have a right to deny people service based on the marginalized identities they have.
Oh yes, businesses have the right to do stuff when I agree with them, but they don't have the right to do it when I disagree with them. That's amazing how things work out like that, isn't it, Riley? Really nice.
And number 3, any Democrats who are out here calling for more civility and more getting along with Republicans can fuck right off.
Go fuck yourself, Riley.
Democrats have tried for so long to reach out to swing voters and independents and moderate Republicans that they've completely betrayed their leftist progressive base.
If you honestly believe that reaching out to people as a leftist makes you less leftist, then you are part of the problem, Riley. Alright, you are the reason that people are uncivil. You know why? Because you're being retarded. Alright, I'm going to say, yes, a lot of people are douchebags to, like, trans people and gay people. Not the vast majority of people, not the majority of people, but a lot. Alright, the number is not small. However, if you try to sway those people into agreeing with you politically, that does not mean that you are getting closer to them politically. Alright? If you are a far left person and you talk to someone on the far right, try to have a political discussion with them, you know, try to be civil during this discussion, that does not mean that you are going farther towards the right. What? How? How do you even...
Center-left establishment Democrats are losing out to progressives like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because their base is tired of the useless pandering to Republicans.
Pandering to Republicans. Like every news article does, you know, like every news station does. Yeah, just pandering to Republicans. Definitely not calling them all assholes or anything. Definitely not going after Trump every day. You know, yeah, they're pandering to Republicans. No, they're not, Riley. And if you read any news at all, you would understand this.
Falling for the Republican trap of calling for civility means that these old centrist Democrats need to get out of the way and let the progressives run things from here.
The reason that centrists exist are because we don't agree with everything that you say. We're not just going to let you run the show. We're not going to let Republicans run the show either. You know, you should not agree with everything that a party agrees with. You know, I don't agree with everything that the left does. I don't agree with everything that the right does. That, by default, makes me a centrist. Alright? No, we're not going to let you run everything. That would be stupid.
We can see who's really fighting for us and who's willing to passively allow the Trump administration to get away with unspeakably horrible things.
Unspeakably horrible things is just a way of saying that you don't know anything that you need to speak of. Alright? Unspeakably horrible thing. Just say what you're talking about. Alright? Say what you actually mean. Give specific examples. You know, you were doing really good earlier with those whole families at the border thing. Go on more about that, even. That'd be cool, you know, that'd be nice to talk about. Don't go for a cop-out answer like that.
Because it's not okay what Trump's doing at the border. Separating children from their parents even when they have legal claims of asylum? Not giving parents a way to find their kids? Telling parents they need to pay to get their kids back? Deporting people to their deaths? Sometimes deporting children without their parents or vice versa. It's inhumane, it's unacceptable, and the only ethical thing to do is to fight back against it.
Most of the things that you have said there are horrible things. I agree with you on the majority of what you have said just there. Not all of it, like I said, but most of it.
There are some who are aware of everything that the Trump administration does and yet still sit back and value their civility over other people's humanity.
No, I believe in debating people. You know, like actually arguing politics and stuff like that. When you debate people, if you ever want to pull people over to your side, you need to be civil while debating them. You know, you can't just call someone an asshole and expect them to agree with you. You know, and in order for you to change things, you need to actually make people believe in what you believe in. You know, in the 1960s, where everything was racist, not just the minority of things like now, in the 1960s, people had to actually convince other people that black people were not horrible. You know, white people had to be convinced that that was true. You know, and people would not have been able to do that if everyone was just calling everyone rude names. Alright? Now, that was part of it, admittedly, because, yeah, that was a very horrible time period. But if there were, like, violent protests, like more of them anyway, then people would not have been swayed so easily. That's why the idea of a peaceful protest is used as often as it is now.
Those people are complicit in the Trump administration's actions. They think it's kinda bad, but not enough to warrant being rude over. And everyone has a line that can be crossed that will make them stop being civil. If someone kidnaps your children, you probably wouldn't want them to come and eat in your restaurant. You'd tell them to fuck off because they kidnapped your child. And I imagine you'd be pretty uncivil. But if they simply spend billions of taxpayer dollars on a government agency that kidnaps other people's children, specifically Central American people's children, then apparently it's not personal enough for you to be uncivil about it.
I don't believe that anyone is actually happy that children are getting separated from their parents. However, regardless of whether or not they are happy about it, in order to convince people that they shouldn't agree with it or that it needs to stop, in order to convince them to take action, you need to be civil and actually convince them to take action. When you make videos calling Republicans the enemy, calling Trump the enemy all the time, then you're just talking to your echo chamber. Alright? You need to actually convince more people in order for you to affect something. The people that watch your videos are people that already agree with you. Because you do not have any sympathy for people that do not agree with you, alright? In this situation, you're calling Republicans the enemies, you're calling Trump bad all the time, with no exception. You know, there's not going to be a Republican who's just like, yeah, I like her now, after she called me an asshole. That's not a thing that people will do. You need to convince them by actually being civil, you know, try to understand their side of things as well, and actually convince them with your arguments.
Everyone has a line at which they become uncivil, at which atrocities are too bad to ignore. Some of us have just recognized that the shit going on right now is really, really fucking evil, and it's only going to get worse if we don't stop it now. The Trump administration will keep pushing the Overton window further and further to the right, and soon everyone will think that what's happening at the border is business as usual, even though it's horrendous. The Overton window, by the way, is the ideas that are considered mainstream or normal in a society. In the US, the Overton window has been a bit further to the right than most other places in the world, meaning that what we see as the centrist position is actually more right-wing to most people outside the US. But Trump is pushing the Overton window even further and further to the right, and soon extremely horrific far-right ideas that once would have never been politically viable are going to be considered okay.
I would argue that it's actually leftists like yourself that are pushing it farther to the right. For example, when you say that everything is racist and like everyone that disagrees with you is a Nazi, let's say, again, for example, when you say that not wanting to date trans people is transphobia, people are being less for you and more against you. Of course, there are some people that actually agree with the far right, not gonna lie, there are some people. But it's actually the outrageous ideas that come from the left that are making people like, yeah, I don't want to be a part of that. You know, when you can say something like milk is racist, then people are just going to be like, yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with you there.
And I'd argue that everyone who's letting the Overton window slide in that direction by not actively fighting against it is complicit.
If not agreeing with you means that I am being complicit, I will be complicit 99% of the time.
Sometimes stopping fascism means being rude or uncivil.
America does not have a fascist government, alright? Let's get one thing straight, alright? We're not like Nazi Germany, as much as you think that we are, as much as you want to compare Trump to Hitler, we're nothing like that, alright? We are not anything at all like a fascist government. And for you to even say that we are, actually belittles people who are in a fascist government. Alright, so, my camera just died. I did not have it on the charger while I was recording this, which in hindsight would have been a good idea. Luckily I noticed the screen right as it died, so you didn't miss too much. My general point is that comparing America to fascist governments is actually disrespectful to people who are actually in fascist governments. America is not even close to being fascist, and for you to even say that it is ridiculous. So now that the video is over, I'd actually like to give you my whole take on this. Being civil is a good thing, alright? When you are trying to have a discussion with someone, you know, it's not okay to just call them an asshole, a faggot, a cunt, etc. if you're trying to prove your point. Alright, if you get into a heated argument, of course some of those are going to come out. You know, it doesn't make it okay, it's understandable. However, when your entire goal is to just be an ass to someone, and then you expect to win the whole argument, well, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. If you are trying to sway people over to your side, it is important to be civil, alright? It makes you look better, and it makes the other side look worse if they're not being civil. Anyway, that's my point. Just be nice to people, and it will make your life monumentally easier. With that being said, I do have a Discord server if you'd like to join it. There will be a link down in the description. You can also follow me on Twitter. There will be a link in the description. I've also started making shirt designs and stuff like that. Not like channel merchandise, but like just general shirt designs. So I'll put a few links down in the description for that as well if you'd like to see. That's really about it. There's not much else to say. So, thanks for watching.